right. So today I have the opportunity to meet with Adam Santos of Dripping Springs. He's been in education for 17 years. And so, just starting off, tell us a bit about, some of the schools you've actually taught at. Assuming it's not all Dripping Springs, but what type of schools have you actually been at?
Right. Oh man. Okay, let me reflect upon everything I've gotten me to this point. My first year, I was in Bryan ISD, so that's college station ISD. From there, I moved to Austin, and I was at Austin ISD here for 6 years, and then I went to Eames slash Westlake ISD for 3 years,
Mhm.
and then which is outside of Austin. And then I went to private school for 5 years, where I was a sole math department for middle school. So that was a very cool experience where I was the only math teacher at a small private school for 5 years. And then after those 5 years, I've this is now my second year in Dripping Springs ISD,
Okay.
which
And
is
then
just
have you
outside
only worked
Austin.
with middle school students?
When I was at private school, I did high school as well, but in public school, I've only done
Hmm.
6 through 8, all the variations. Some years doing multiple grade levels, but yeah, all middle school for public school, and then I got some high school in when I was doing private school as
Oh
well. I did
man.
middle school
I just
plus
remember
some high school classes.
student teaching. That's when I had to determine, am I going to be a high school or a middle school teacher?
Hmm.
And it was at that point, I did that year. It's like I did my time. And that's when I realized it wasn't for me. Like I belonged in the high school, the emotion. I don't know what it is about middle school students that I just couldn't, it was just too much for me. So the fact,
So, yeah, funny story off of that. I had the similar experience where I did student teaching in fourth grade and in eighth grade. And at the end, I was like, I'm definitely not doing middle school. I'm going to stay fourth grade. Elementary's like, this was super fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed recess, playing football with the kids. So when I was done with student teaching, I was convinced I was going to go elementary. And then I got my first job, in middle school. When you get your first
mhm.
job, you do whatever they give you, right? So I got middle school, and I've been here ever since. Which was funny because I told a student this year, they were asking me about how long I've been teaching and everything, and I was like, man, altogether this is like my 20th year of middle school. Like I've been in middle school a really long time, because they were asking me like, you gonna teach in the high school at some point? And I was like, I haven't made it out of middle school. Like I've been here
Aw,
for 20 years. Like so, it feels like I've been there, but I've really enjoyed it. Like I've
yeah.
grown to really, obviously, I'm still here on it. So I've definitely grown to enjoy middle school. After, yeah, I remember having that mentality
Mhm,
after student
mhm.
teaching of
Well,
like,
good for
nah, it's
you.
not for
There's
me.
someone, yeah. I feel like all
All right.
teachers were put in a place and we know our lane and it ends up working out. We have enough of us to go around basically from all the
Yeah.
different grades. For sure.
Right.
Now, do
Yeah.
you
That's
ever have
that's true.
has a student ever come up to you and said, can you please just move up with me to high school? Do they ask like, you as a teacher, we get you, and like, we're so worried about like high school math. Be like, I think it's the movie is Freedom Riders, where you just like keep teaching them each and every year.
So fun story about that. You're already hitting on great questions here. When I was in private school, so I taught like all of the middle school. So I actually taught the same students for sixth grade,
Okay.
seventh grade, eighth grade, and then 9 and 10. So I actually, for 5 years, there was a group of kids that I moved up, and every year I would have the same, which kind of made it frustrating, right, as a teacher, because normally, if the kids go into the school year, they'll tell you, the teacher didn't teach me this last year, and
But
then you
it's
can
you.
always blame last year's teacher. And the problem with that is I would be like,
My
who is
bad.
your teacher?
That's on
It
you
was
guys.
me,
It's my
right? So like
bad. Mhm.
there's no one to blame when the kids didn't know something, because like it was me. So I was responsible for all those years. And actually, so what I do now is I do special education, inclusion, and resource. And I was seventh grade last year, and I did move up. So this is here in my second year. I moved up with the eighth grade, with the now eighth graders. So this is my second year of being able to have the same students on my caseload and support them in the classroom. And it's amazing. I mean, it's fantastic. I think it's a win-win
Yeah, that's what I
for
was
me.
thinking.
I
The
already
work.
know the kids, I already know kind of where they are. The kids know me. They have a new teacher, but I'm still like, they still know me and everything. And so I'm able to relay like, guys, remember last year we did this lesson with this teacher, and now we're doing. So I think that's
Mhm.
kind of the secret sauce in education, is having teachers move up with kids. I know it's done very rarely for all kinds of reasons. I know a lot of teachers, they really enjoy working with a certain teacher, and so they don't want to move up, or they enjoy their grade levels. And I loved my team in seventh grade, and they were all upset I was moving to eighth grade, but I was like, guys,
Yeah,
I'm
to
just
just
like one
find team,
hallway
yeah,
around the corner
still
from you. Like I'm still, but still, I get that
yeah,
as teachers, we
definitely.
feel very connected to our hallways and to our classrooms and everything like that. But I do think it's really cool to be able to move up with the kids and stay with the same parents because
Yeah,
on back to
like, you
school
can
night,
put
the
a
parents
fast one by
same
me. I
again.
already know how Mr.
So
Santos is, I know how he flows, I
yeah,
know the homework style, the situation.
yeah. So I think there's a lot of benefits of moving up with the classes and with the students, and it was really great
Mhm.
when I got to do it in private school for those 5 years. I had the same students all throughout, so
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
consistency
I ended
really
up
really
having
helps. So.
for algebra and geometry, I remember that that was a situation for me. I ended up teaching, I think my the very first year I only had algebra or only geometry, and then the next year I did the other. And so the funny thing was actually algebra than geometry. I had a student in my geometry class that
Mm,
went to the counselor because they saw on the schedule, they saw Mrs. Langford, but the thing was, the year before I was Miss
mhm.
Brookins, and so I got married. And so they
Right.
had
Yeah.
heard things about, "Oh my gosh, you wanna have Miss Brookins, you wanna have Miss Brookins." And so they went to the counselor like, "I don't like
Mhm.
Miss Langford. I've heard stuff about Miss Brookins, and I feel I need to be in her class because right
Yeah.
now our personalities aren't clicking." And I'm like, "Guys, come on." But the counselor, they got a kick out of that whole story. But
That's funny.
having the opportunity to see my
Mhm.
Algebra 1 students, and then you have some of them you have for geometry, definitely I don't know, that bond with those students, especially in high school, it just makes such a great bond where it ended
Yeah.
up sometimes with their algebra 2 teacher, they would come back to me for tutoring. And I think that, like you said, that is the secret sauce. Just that the rapport you can have with some students for
Mhm.
multiple years. Yeah, that's key. That's awesome. Now, with you being a veteran teacher, you've been in the game for a long time, you came back this year. So, like, what are you doing for, like, is burnout a thing for you? Or, like, how do you stay energized? I mean, you went through the waves of the before COVID, and then now.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
downs, but
I think I've been lucky that through various circumstances, I've gotten to switch my role at the
mm,
school almost every year. Like, I can think of very few years of my career where I've literally had the same assignment 2 years in a row. That's been very rare, and I think that does help and energize every year's a new year. Um, I'm trying to think right now. I'm like, man, for the past 7, 8, whatever years, I've had a new classroom every year. And I know for some
yes.
people that does not sound fun, but I actually find that really enjoyable because every year is a new year to start over, do things again. I have a different assignment. Like I said, I really repeat the same grade, even though I'm teaching the same subjects, whatever. There's always something different about it every single year. Definitely, I thought what was super cool was having 10 years in public school and then going to private for 5 years was a fantastic thing that like I just kind of lucked into, right? Like I wish I could give that to everybody, but it was interesting because when I got to the private school, I was a
Yeah,
one man math
right.
department, right? So you start thinking about like, okay, I now have the complete freedom to do whatever I want.
Mhm.
what is it that I actually want to do, right? If you have the freedom, because I know in public school we have curriculum departments and we have chairs that determine this and that policies on homework, and you have all those little things about it, right? But when you get in, I got into a private school that was so small, they were like, you can determine everything for the middle school math program. And I mean, that was a very fun 5 years because I got to experiment with a lot of like, do I want to give a test every week? I used to have to do stuff like that. Do I want to do like, so you start thinking about all the things that we were trained to do and thinking about like, do I actually want to use them now that I have the complete freedom to do what I want? And that definitely like, being able to go into that kind of environment after 10 years kind of revitalized of like me thinking about, the ways that we always did things and like, what could we do differently? And really feeling like your classroom was a lab to try things, right?
Absolutely.
Like I definitely had the freedom to like, oh, I'll try something that I normally would have to ask 20 people at another school to do kind of thing. And so like that was a really, really interesting thing. And then being able to come back to public school has honestly been super fun because I think once I had those 5 years where I got to do whatever I want, as I'm sitting there, I'm wondering, well, the first thing is I miss the people, right? Like being a one man PLC is not as fun. Like I miss sitting with other teachers. I miss the math debates and the arguments about whether we should do stuff this or that. Like I miss that stuff. Like that was good
Yeah.
stuff because you grow from those conversations, right? But also as you sit there by yourself, and I'm like, I think things are going pretty well here. The question starts to pop in. Well, could this scale up? Right? It's really easy to kind of mold a math classroom to what you want it to be when you don't have to plan it around with everybody else. But then the question I always had in my head was like, would these ideas work in a public school setting? Would they work in a class with more students in it? Would they work with other teachers? And so that kind of question kind of like re-energized me to want to come back to public school to be like, can I take some of the things that I learned over the past 5 and then 15 years
That's
and
good.
translate them into a new environment? And of
Yeah.
course, no, it's not always that easy, right? And so it's been a challenge trying to apply some of the ideas, but I think
Yeah.
that's kind of that's why we're here, right? Like that's the fun of it is trying to problem solve new challenges. And what was interesting too is when I left public school, that was pre-COVID. So now I'm back in public school post-COVID, and everything's different. And every year everything's different, right? Like this year in Texas, we have
Oh,
the
yeah.
no phone law and stuff like that, no electronic devices in the school. So I don't know, man. I think as a teacher, the longer you stay into it, very rarely is every year the same. There's
But
always
that
something
change
different
that you're
about every
talking
single
about,
year.
I think
Um,
that's valuable,
yeah,
but so many
that's what we're here for.
teachers, they, like, I
Mm,
mean, change can be uncomfortable, obviously, especially if you've been teaching the same thing and you feel, I
mhm,
got this down. Why do I want to change? But it like that sparks something else I feel in your
mhm,
brain whenever you're reaching out and it's like, you know what? I haven't taught this, but I know that everything I taught my students prepares them for this. So let me have a stab at this to make sure that I am setting it up correctly. Um, I went from a 6A school outside of San Antonio, so I was at Steele, but then I went to Luling, and Luling
mhm,
was so small. And so for me, I put in so many years at Steele and then to go to Luling, and
mhm,
I wasn't the only person, but I'm used to having like a team of like six, seven, eight people for just algebra one, And so when I got to
yeah,
Luling and I saw what I was teaching, and it's
mhm,
like I had algebra, I had geometry, I had algebra two, and then it was just like, excuse me, I'm doing all these in one day. But the freedom piece was there. And so even though I was teaching all those
mhm,
things, there wasn't as many restraints. And I did have the opportunity to say, you know what, I have taught it like this in the past. But given that I am allowed more time, now I can kind of do more of these hands on activities. That's one thing that I did appreciate. So, yeah, I think teachers need to kind of rethink things. And then if they are to the point of being burnt out, I think that's the time for that little bit of a change. And even if it's to another school, that could be enough, to like get things going.
mhm,
That's good. I like that.
yeah,
I like that. So,
yeah. It also definitely helped too to teach the same. I mean, that's the thing that was interesting about private school is I had to teach sixth, seventh, eighth, and 10th grade all in the same day. And like that actually helped me a lot because as you get to see that vertical, we talk about vertical alignment. It's interesting when you are the sole vertical alignment and everything, but it did help me
mhm,
connect and see what it looks like. And it helps with differentiation because you can see like I know how to go up, I know how to go back and everything. And so that was a huge change that we don't thankfully they don't make people do that in public school where you go 4 different grade levels in the same day, but having to do that at a small school was actually like a really cool thing. It was actually really good. I feel like it did make me a better teacher, as stressful as it was to get four things going. Um, yeah, very rarely can you see it all at once,
yeah.
right? And I think
With your
that
students
was a
that
pretty
you've
cool thing.
had, what do they remember you by? Like, can you think of anything that like they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had Mr. Santos and one thing about him."
Yeah, okay, I got something. I forget where at what point I learned this or got this thing going. I do this silly thing. It's not math related. It's actually called family share time. All right. So family share time is I would randomly pick some kids. I have like, the random name picker or something like that. And we start off class by doing 2 sentence stems. One is something good that happened to me, and the other one is something good I'm looking forward to. And so we would roll, we would spin, somebody's name, and it would land on Mr. Santos, and you get to answer the question of like, something good that happened to me and something good you're looking forward to. And this week I was like, something I'm looking forward to is college football coming back on this weekend. Something really short and simple to share something about your life, and then we do this little clap out. We're like, okay, if I said college football, we would all go college football on three. One, two, three, college football. And then it would be somebody else's turn and they would say something good that happened to them. And we would do a little clap out. So I've started beginning classes that way for the past few years. And like, it's a fun way to structure the
Yeah.
whole, like, how was your weekend conversations that we have as teachers, right? We're always like, what do you want to do? And usually it's always the same kids who want to share about what they did. But this kind of gets everybody involved and you get to learn something about everybody. And there's always some kids who, they don't want to share right away or they're kind of shy. But as the year goes on and you kind of keep that consistency, I had just remember so many great stories
Yeah.
from kids that were fairly quiet, right? And March rolls around and they finally share something really interesting about themselves. Like I got third place at a horse riding
Yes.
competition, and you're like, I had no idea you rode horses. Like that's amazing. What's your horse's name? And they'd be like
Got them because
Thunder,
they're
and I'd
gonna
be
want
like,
to
okay, everybody,
share. They're
Thunder
gonna
on
want to
three, one, two,
share,
three,
and then you
Thunder.
never know the connections that happen from
Yeah,
them sharing that one thing.
yeah, the kids would connect. I would like it's just it always my favorite thing to hear because you get to hear other kids' stories about whatever it is that they do in life. And like I said, it's a great way to structure listening in a math classroom because that's always a big thing is we're trying to share, creates that that safe space, right? If you're going to be sharing your answers and your thoughts about math, you need to be a good listener. You need to be able to take in what other people are saying and everything. So I always thought it was a good way to warm up the whole speaking and listening part. That's what we want in math class, and to do it in a way that was something it wasn't always silly. And I think what was always cool about it, somebody would always share something a little deeper, something meaningful, and you're like, whoa, that was awesome, kind of thing. So yeah, I think most kids do remember that about my class. We had a family share time, and they won't let me
Like,
skip it
wait a
anymore,
minute,
right? The kids will
slow
start class and be
down.
like, we need to
I
do
think it
family
takes
share.
the
Yep,
edge takes the edge
exactly.
off of the
So
math
you
class,
establish
those that
that.
aren't really looking forward to the
Yeah.
class, but looking forward to you and looking forward to the fact that, you know what, this is I really want to tell somebody this. And if you're doing it with like the randomizer
Yeah.
or something like that, you always have students that are shy, but they have a
Mhm.
want. It's like I want to share this, but I don't want to raise my hand, but I
Yeah.
just want someone to like notice me and yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want
That's
somebody to
good. You got
ask
something
me,
special
yeah,
there.
how am I
That is
doing?
awesome.
Right.
That's a great way just to like, yes, you
Mhm.
have a math class, but we got to build those relationships and find a way just to get these students to share. And no, I would appreciate that in class for sure. All right. Well, the only other thing I have to ask you
Mhm.
is if you had a playlist to describe, I'm not sure how I went about it before, but teaching, what would be your number one, the first song on this playlist?
Man, that is a great question. I just love something upbeat. I like to play music in class. Actually, funny you asked that. Like, I like to play music in class. Usually, it can just be kind of some lo-fi or something. But like, I've gotten to the point now where like, if I'm teaching and I forget to put music
Mhm.
on, I'm like, wait, something's missing, and I'll have to like, oh, let me get a Spotify playlist or something like that. I'm a huge video gamer. Like, I love video games, and so I love video game
Oh,
soundtrack music because there's always like, there's always great music, but there's no lyrics and words to it. And every now and then a kid will recognize the song, like, "Oh, I played that game," or a kid will be like, "Is that Minecraft?" So yeah, I just have a like my class playlist is usually some video game music. I like a lot of different things that kind of as a teacher, I hear something come on that'll get me like, yeah, I like this song kind of thing. Like a Street Fighter song will come on. I'm like, yeah, it kind of pumps me up to teach kind of thing. So yeah, I'll say that's kind of my playlist is something that music that will remind me of a video game that'll get me excited, and it's not necessarily a distraction to everybody else. And it's
yeah.
always cool when kids make that connection and they'll be like, is this Legend of Zelda? And you're like, it is, and
Awesome.
you
So
kind of
my
make
my
that
plan
connection that
is
way.
to get these songs or these ideas in,
Okay,
and then
yeah.
it'll start off the podcast for the next episode. So fingers crossed that I can make this happen. But I'm gonna pull from these video games, and
Yeah,
hopefully I can blend that in for the next interview. Well, thank you so much
that
for
would
your
be cool.
time, Adam. It's been
Yeah,
great
that'd be super
talking to
cool.
you, and thank you for being
Absolutely.
a part of Fuse and one of our fabulous fellows. Appreciate it, and I will talk to you later. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.